But I always try and recon kind of like what are go through my previous notes or intel, anything on the form that I have. And then from there, it's kind of like, who is this person, right? Like, where are they located? One of my mentors taught me early on, it might sound silly, but he's like, I want you to visualize who they are. What do they look like, right? Like, what is their age? I want you to get in that mind space. So I just kind of formulate, like, who are they? Why are they here? What do they want? Why do they need it? From there, because and again, you guys on like the Nick account, there's probably going to be 4 or 5 different funnels people are coming in on, right? So and we'll get familiar with them as we go. But we need to know, like, did you sign up for this webinar because you want to learn subject 2, or did you see a fix and flip, video that Nick put out, and you're in the middle of a flip, getting your ass kicked, and you don't know how to make that process more duplicatable and repeatable. So there's going to be a bunch of ways to do it. So mine is always just like quick intro, how you doing? Good, glad to hear that. Where are you located? Kind of the same stuff all of you guys did on your mock pitch when we went through it. Build that up. So build the frame. Hey, real quick, before we get too far, purpose of our call today is really just to get to know you, where you're at, what you're needing. Once you've gone through everything, I'd be happy to offer some insight on what it might look like to work with our team, potentially schedule a call with our leadership team or enrollment advisor. Obviously, don't ask permission, move straight into discovery. Some of this stuff might be elementary, but I think it'll give you guys a baseline of kind of like the way I do it, and then do it however you want, like whatever's comfortable for you. I like this question because it almost puts off the energy, like when they're like, oh, I'm brand new to it. It's like, oh, okay. Like it kind of makes them, oh, are all your other students kind of have some history there and now they're coming for some help? Like they went and struggled on their own and now they're coming for some help. So it's kind of a psychological play. And then, what did you do? Where, when, how much, how?
Cool. So this also gets into the have you tried anything else? So maybe it'll help us figure out if they've been burned before. Is that a dual purpose?
100%. Yeah, good call. Good call. So basically, it's just diving deep. Tell me more about that. This question. So again, this is kind of a generalized script. So like this may or may not play a part, but if they're doing deals, use it. Like, who do you have on your power team? Like they talk a lot about power team. Who do you have on your power team now? Like, do you have private and hard money? Like, contractors, and I usually don't give them all the answers. I like to just ask them, like, hey, who do you have on your team now?
Totally.
And let them kind of, because if they don't know what they're talking about, well, I have like a BA that helps me, but that's kind of, what system. Okay. And then I kind of go into, I like to get to know them instead of going straight into these questions. I like to get, and I'll update this, but I like to get more information on the client, like their background first. Like, hey, are you brand new to real estate? Yeah, this is brand new. I've been, wanting to get involved with it forever, but I see what's going on with the economy, the writing on the wall. Like, it's telling, all signs are pointing that we're going into another recession, and I want to be prepared. I want to take advantage of it. Okay, cool. What do you do for a living now? How long have you been there? Do you enjoy it? Are you looking to replace your income or just supplement? Like, I dive in heavily. Spouse, right? Do you have a partner involved? Spouse, life partner, business partners, or anybody that you make these kind of decisions, or it's going to affect them, whether it's in a positive or negative way, whether you did or didn't do this. I get into all of that, and then it's like, hey, what if you left your job? Just ballpark figure. What kind of annual? What are you producing annually with your current role? Oh, I'm doing 100 grand. Okay, is that W-2? Like, I like to I get granular, but then all of a sudden it's like, okay, so they're making 100 W-2, but they're probably taking home 65, 70 grand. You married? Yeah. Do you have kids? Yeah. Okay. Does your wife work? Okay, that makes more sense. It's living on 70K take home. That's not as easy as it used to be. Do you agree with that? Oh, for sure. Right. So once we get through all that, then I start moving into more of like the real estate related, hey, who do you have on your team? What systems do you have in place to delegate and support that team? Again, you guys can formulate these questions to your own style, and it might not even be this exact question, but hopefully it'll give you kind of flags to go. I can use this to go this direction.
Yeah.
How many hours weekly are you focusing on deal creation? If they're not doing it, how many hours a week can you focus on deal creation, right? So just keep that kind of generalized based on where they're at. What are you generating a monthly revenue now? Again, this is going to be a question that applies if they're doing deals. If they're not doing deals, ask it up above with their job. What's prevented you, right? Think to yourself, what's different for them now? And this is more of just a thought for you. Why would they do different, right? Like, you're telling me you wanted to do real estate for the past 5 years. The inner skeptic creeps in for me, where I'm like, well, why in the hell would you do it now? Like, you've probably looked at a million of these webinars, seminars, ebooks, all this stuff. Like, why are you here now? Right. So I'm kind of, one of my mentors put it like this. He said, Corey, every single lead you have is guilty of not being a deal until proven innocent. And your job is to uncover everything to prove they're a deal. Right.
That's a great framework.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
So what's prevented you? We talked about that. Is that the only thing? So like you'll notice I'll ask a question, verify, verify, verify. And it's like get down to what it actually is. Let me pause there. You guys have any thoughts, questions, ideas so
Did you
far?
say every client is guilty of being a deal until proven innocent? Did I get that?
Every deal is guilty of not being a deal.
Yes. Okay. Backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like,
you
I don't-
have to-
Not
they
guilty.
have to qualify themselves essentially. So you're not saying yes, yes, yes. You're saying,
Otherwise not.
hey, here are the problems that I've seen other people run into. You know,
Yes.
do you really think that you can make the time for this program?
Yeah, exactly, bro. I love that. You're just pushing them back. And it's like, well, yeah. And they keep coming back to you. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like I'm taking steps back and they're coming towards me like, no, yeah, I'll make the time. Like, yeah, well, the reason I haven't is because, and they start selling you. I think that's money, Rex. It's money. What do you want to do? So before I keep going through this, you guys, here's what goes through my head when I get on these calls. It's less than a minute of rapport. It's quick, right? Straight into it.
Yep.
Now the account I'm on, it's a seminar account. So it's kind of like what we're doing every other weekend with Nick, which is they go to a class, they speak to them for 3 days. Some of them buy a big program. We upsell those people. The people that don't buy the program, we sell those people too, right? So I'm always just leaning in like, hey, how was the class? Hey, how long have you been following Nick? How long have you been familiar with Nick and kind of what he does? I would lean heavily into that on your discovery. Because that's going to tempt gauge and tell you like, well, I either just started following him or, hey man, I've been following this guy for 6 months and like, he's doing a lot of stuff. Like he's got multiple companies, he's doing deals all over the country. You're going to gauge how vested they are. But my thing's always just quick rapport, real estate background. When you think of big picture vision, like what are you trying to do here? Help me understand like 3 to 5 years down the road. If we start today, right? If you were to start working with our team today, 3 to 5 years from now, what are you trying to do? And I'm not talking like I want to be making $1 million a year or have, Ferrari. What are you really looking to do at your core? And then I just, and let them go, right? I take cliff notes until they're done. If they pause, I stay quiet, make sure they're done. My favorite thing in that scenario is like, you still there? Oh yeah, just taking notes and making sure I didn't interrupt. This is exactly what I need to know to be able to help you. Okay. And then they usually keep going, right? But the reason I love that so much, you guys, is it's kind of like, it's a simplified version. There's way more questions built out through the whole thing, but it's like vision first, obstacles next. It's like, if you were going here and you're here, what are those obstacles in order for us to create that bridge? Like I always envision the drawbridge kind of dropping and they can walk across it finally. What's prevented you from hitting these targets in the past? Like what's prevented you from getting involved in doing all this in the first place? Something we need to understand with real estate, and the beauty is you guys have both done it. 99.9% of the people I talk to, it's like, I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
I get all excited. I get all pumped up. I learn about flips. I learn about rentals. I learn about short-term rentals. I learn about creative finance subject to multifamily. And I get ready to start. And then it's almost paralyzing. Like it's paralyzingly overwhelming, if that's a way to put it.
Yeah.
And I get stuck in the weeds and I just kind of get stuck, right? So what would it require for you to get unstuck, do you suppose? Like, don't give them the answer, make them tell you, because real estate can be so vague, right? Like, I don't want to have to explain what wholesale is on every deal. I don't want to have to explain how fix and flips work and how multifamily, like, I don't want to explain any of that stuff. I want to spend my time driving home why they need it and why they can't have it without us and what needs to happen in order for them to get that particular result. Because for everybody, it's different, right? Like we hired a marketing coach for coaches and closers for Instagram funnel creation, messaging, positioning. And a big part of their program is like, we're going to teach you how to like close too. Like there's all this. And he's like, hey, we're going to skip that part and go straight into it. Right. So like, just make sure you don't get stuck on unnecessary steps. Now, it doesn't mean shortcut, but let them tell you what they want. And then, hey, what are the obstacles you see in order for you to hit those targets? And then drive those home. So I'm Cliff Notes again. It's just Cliff Notes. Well, I think the biggest thing for me is going to be finding deals, right? Like where to look, what areas across the country, where are the buying pockets? I hear that a lot. Once I find a deal, how do I know it's a good deal? Right? Like I don't want to be that retail investor that people rely on, like I'm relying on realtors to send me deals. Because at the end of the day, like I want to make sure it's safe, right? If the economy turns and it drops, and real estate drops 20%, I want to know I'm still in a good position on the deals that I have, where if I want to get rid of them or keep them as a rental, I can still cash flow them and I can still turn it. Right. So that's the stuff I'm looking for, because truthfully, you guys, we don't have to solve all the other problems they're going to run into. We only have to solve the problems they have today. We're going to solve those problems once they're with a coach, right? But the fear of why they haven't invested into a coach, the fear of why they haven't started doing deals yet, is directly tied to the uncertainty in that process. So you're just uncovering the uncertainty. And then once you uncover it and you know it's there, I'll usually wait until they give me everything. And then I'll go back and kind of temp check. How hot is this one? Okay, maybe it's not there. How hot is this one? How hot? Oh, that's it right there. And then I just keep pushing that button. Bing, 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 bing.
Yeah, when you're talking about temp check, are you talking about questions like, okay, yeah, I understand that that's blocking you. Do you think that that's the main thing that's blocking you? Or do you feel like there's something else that's just really been putting the brakes on?
I think that's a
That type of stuff.
money question on every single call, Rex. I think that I love, because you're not only temp gauging, is that the main problem? You're going to get a yes or no or kind of maybe, or is there anything else? You're giving them the authority, you're giving them the opportunity to say, wait, there is more. But I think it also is a great question, because they go, hey, Rex really gets me. Like, he understands the problem. He's been there. He understands that this is exactly where I've been struggling. And I think that confidence that brings, as silly as it sounds, it's one question, but because it's like, you heard me, let me tell you a little bit more about what my other fears and concerns are. And then you can ask that once they give you those, it's like, okay, well, I know you mentioned that finding and locating deals was important, but it sounds like, utilizing you have a 401k that you cashed out before the market dropped and it's sitting cash. You mentioned you're kind of moving backwards with inflation. So getting that 200, 300, 400 grand in cash to work in a way that's scalable, that's safe, right? Not to say that doesn't come with risk. We have to be careful with that, with talking investments, right? We're not financial advisors. But I think that's the beauty in it, man, is it's like, just like one of the 10 questions I like to ask all the time is, hey, let me pause here for just a second, Bob. If you had somebody that was working with you one-to-one, like a Nick, that could show you step-by-step how to find and analyze these off-market opportunities you're looking for these flips or for these rentals or for these subject twos, if they essentially just removed the question marks, meaning you still did all the application, but they did it with you, right? They showed you step-by-step how to dive into PropStream, how to create the filters, how to find the pre-foreclosures, the divorcees, whatever it might be. If they could remove all the question marks and give you either a green or red light on the deal, and you fully understood why it was a green light, why it was a red light, so that when you made the offer, you had full confidence. I guess I'm just curious how that would affect the overall trajectory of where you're headed. So I'm just going back and hitting what they already told me, you guys, where they're struggling. And it's like, well, if you had somebody that could do X, Y, and Z, and all I'm doing is tying it back to what they told me, it's always the same 5 or 6 things.
Do you
How
use
to
that
find
as a transition to the close sometimes? It seems like you have questions. I'm a huge favor of the Cole Gordon. Like, they give you all this information. Don't make the same pitch to everybody. Adjust the pitch to what their strong pain points are. Right. So you go, hey, well, you said that you were struggling with this and this and this. Well, if we had, if Nick's team was there holding your hand and, you were able to overcome that inflation, just whittling your income aside and get started today, is there anything stopping you? Is kind of like would you use that as a transition, you think, or do you do that more in the middle of the discovery?
No, man, I think that's a good question. I think that it depends on the client.
Sure.
Right. But I also like to remind me to talk about kind of like the way I commit them before I actually transition to the pitch, because I'm like we all are, I'm listening and feeling what's happening in the call in order to determine when I transition. What I've been trying really hard to do recently, though, you guys, is I'm trying really hard to not ever shortcut. So it's like I have a process that I want to go through, and it doesn't mean the pitch is always the same. The pitch could be different every single call. But there's certain things I have to cover in order for me to go, okay, like, where can they weasel out on me at the end of this call? Where can they wiggle out or use it as something that I did because I didn't ask the question, right? And I think the interesting part about that would be, when do I transition, right? So let's say that this person's tracking with me really well.
Sure.
And it's like, look, man, I don't see, honestly, there being anything that would hold me back from getting started today. That's when I might lean into, okay, well, obviously, working with our team is going to be new. Have you ever hired a mentor or coach before?
Mhm.
Have you ever invested in yourself before in something like this? I want them to start going down that path with me too, psychologically, like, hey, I'm jacked. But it's like, how many people crack under pressure when it comes down to investing money? There's a reason 95% of the country works for the other 5%, and that 5% makes 95% of the money.
Yeah.
Right. It just is what it is. So one of the things that I like to do is if it's there, if I feel like it's there and I can hear it, I can feel it, they're like, dude, I'm in. Like, yes, that's exactly what I want. I've looked at all these programs, but it's just a bunch of theory-based education where I go through courses and there's nobody to help me, right? But if I had somebody there to help me step by step, to where when I had a deal, they taught me how to go find them and how to vet them, but then I could bring it to them with the numbers that I ran, and they could double cross-check my numbers and then tell me whether it's a go or not. And if not, understand why, so I don't chase that rabbit anymore. Like, that's exactly what I've been looking for. I just haven't been able to find it. I'm going to transition into like what I call like commitments or conditions. And it's like, the way I like to do it is, okay, that makes perfect sense. And that's just so you guys know and I'm not saying you have to do it exactly like I do it. I usually won't transition for about 30 minutes. Sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's 20. I'm making sure that like I look at it like a cruise ship, and I'm going and checking every door, locking it, locking it. They can only go out that door, and that's giving me a credit card or hanging up the phone. The way I like to transition that is, once I know they're ready, hey, do you mind if and I think we talked about this in our last call, but do you mind if I share some of the obstacles that I see clients struggle with when they get to this point, when they get to the point where you're at right now? I've never had somebody tell me no. It's usually like, that would be great, actually. That would be really helpful. And this is where I'm going to bring up the objections that they could give me at the end. I'm going to place the weight on shoulders of clients that I've talked with in the past, right? Because it's, instead of like, I think you're going to do this, it's like, look, let me tell you about what's happened with these other clients. And then they directly correlate that, well, that's either me or no, that's not me, and here's why. And they pitch me on it. Right. The first obstacle that I see with a lot of people is time. And Bob, what's interesting about it is we're all busy, right? We all have the same 24 hours in a day. The problem is creating or making a priority out of whatever it is we decide to commit to. Let me just ask you something. If we were to roll up our sleeves, if we were to pair you with Nick's team so we could get this thing rolling, help me understand where you would pencil out that 10 hours. How many people do you get when they get to the end of the pitch? Like, this is great. I don't know if I'm gonna have enough time. It's like, no, we're going to cover that right now. Well, I would have to make the time. But truthfully, Corey, like, I am busy and I got a lot going on, but I've got to do something different, man. I'm going to make the time. You sure? Like, I'm constantly, you sure? Like, I'm the devil's advocate almost, right?
No.
When they verify that with me, it's like, let's talk about the second piece of time, which is timing. We talk to people all the time, and truthfully, everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants to create wealth. They all want cash flow. They all want to create assets. They want to leave a legacy for their family. But it's interesting when it comes down to actually making it happen, and the things and the necessary components of getting that started. It's almost like there's a fork in the road, and the majority of people choose to rip the steering wheel to the right. And that means I got to go back to my normal life because it's more comfortable and it's familiar. There's a small percentage of people that have gotten to this point in the conversation that when we decide to roll up our sleeves and get to work, they turn left. The people that turn right were looking for a way off the phone because it got real, it got uncomfortable. And truthfully, stepping out of our comfort zone is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. What do you think separates the person that chooses to invest in our team? Not only physically invest their time and emotional resource, their resources, et cetera, but investing financially into their education to understand how to do this. What do you think separates the person that chooses to move forward today versus the person that comes up with the same excuses that we've been programmed to come up with, that they've got to sleep on it until tomorrow, next week, next month? What do you think separates those two people? So I'm not driving them to tell me, well, I'll do it today yet. That's not my intention. My intention is to go, are you window shopping or are you ready to go? Right? Are you ready to commit, or are you just looking around? Right? That's why my discovery is so deep on the front end, because when I get to this point, if they're like, well, I don't know if I'm that serious. Well, hold on a minute. You just told me you've been looking for 5 years and you finally had a huge eye opener that your job, like 50 people got let go at your job. And if you got let go, you don't have more than 4 or 5 months of reserves. What do you mean you're not ready? Like, I'm always going to be able to tie it back. So do the discovery up front so you have those ninja stars to throw back when you need them.
Totally. Question on that.
Yeah.
Do you typically price for the very end? Obviously, there's a bunch of different ways to do it, but it sounds like you're getting those ninja stars, you're getting answers to handle their objections, and then you're essentially getting them to commit, right? And you have those ninja stars if you need them. And then it sounds like after that is when you talk about price.
Pretty close. And we're almost there. So let's break into that.
Cool.
So basically what I'm looking for is I've already thought about this long enough, and I look at 2007, 8, 9. A lot of my friends invested and they're very wealthy now, and I'm not. So I've got to get out of my own way. And I know that today's the day because it's coming again and I don't want to miss the boat. Like that's the only answer that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Anything else is like, well, I'm still kind of looking around and track them. Like, well, hold up. Like, let's pause for a second. What do you mean? That sounds kind of wishy-washy, Bob.
Totally.
Right. So let's just say they tell us what they told us, right? I don't want to miss the boat. It's like, okay, let's talk about the next obstacle I see, and it's mindset. Write that down, right? Mindset. Bob, when I think of mindset, there's a lot of things that go through my head. If you're in my role and your job is solely responsible for bringing aboard people that we can help, we know they'll do the work. We know they're going to be an easy client, meaning if they have a problem, they'll call. If they need help with a deal, they'll get on one of our calls. They'll pick up the phone, they'll get on a webinar, whatever they have to do, they're going to do it, knowing our team's there to support them. When you think of mindset though, and the person that would ideally be a fit for us, if you were in my shoes, knowing that the wrong people should not come in, which one of those people do you work with? The individual that says they want to call you back in a week, tomorrow, whatever, or the person that says, you know what, I'm tired of being tired, let's go. Who do you work with? I want to talk through that mindset with you. Once I go through that, the next part of mindset is like, I want to talk about the other piece, and it's money. And there's a direct correlation between mindset and money. Now, Bob, help me understand, why would it make sense that if Nick and the team were going to walk you through this over the next 6 months, you guys know the offer better than I do, 6 months, 12 months, 4 months, whatever. Why would it make sense that there would be a financial commitment on it? So I lead them in that way because I want to hear the logic. I want them to tell me why it would make sense. And if they tell me anything besides like, well, I mean, obviously, if I'm going to work with someone that's been there, done that, that's done 4,000 flips, it's done X, Y, and Z. I mean, I would expect to pay them for their expertise and their time, and kind of like time travel. If I can go from here to there faster than I can do it on my own, safer than I can do it on my own, I'd be silly not to invest in something like that, right? So a lot of people are right there, as you guys know, what does it cost, right? What does it cost? I'm always going to drive that back to them and be like, that's an interesting question. Bob, we'll come right back to that, but I guess I'm curious, what do you think the difference is between the cost of something and investing into something? Get them in that consumer, out of the consumer mindset into the investor mindset. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's like, okay, when I go buy a new pair of shoes or I go buy a new truck, I'm buying something. When I'm hiring a coach or a mentor to help me save time and ensure that I can deliver a very particular result, I'm investing into them. When I buy something, there's no ROI on it. When I invest in something, I'm looking for a particular ROI on it. Would you agree with that, Bob? Well, yeah, I guess you're right. What do you think the difference is between the investor and consumer when it comes to business? Like if they're giving you those answers, you've got to drive it home and cover it right then, right? And I'm probably going deeper than we need to on this, but
Sure.
Drive that home so that they step into that. Because if their arms are folded, I know we talked about that on Friday. If their arms are folded still, meaning like they're kind of guarded, I've got to get to the point where they unfold their arms to where I can step in and go, okay, so let me ask you again. If we were to roll up our sleeves today, like, is there anything that would prevent you from getting started? You know what? Rex, you've helped me really look at the big picture, and truthfully, no, there's not. I understand that in order to get this thing rolling, it's going to be an investment. What does it cost? And then you can break that down. I don't even like to give them the number. What I like to do is go, you know what we do here is very prescriptive based on the client. Some people need help with just sub 2. Some people need help with all of it. I guess the question I would ask though, Bob, let's just say it was a $20,000 investment. Going back to the mindset piece, knowing what you know, knowing that you're looking to have apartment complexes, you're looking to have $50,000 a month cash flow. This is why the discovery is so important. Knowing that you want to ensure your kids have the college education they need, How do you justify and rationalize making a $20,000 investment so you can work with a team that has the ability to do that? I want to tie that down to where it's like if I've done my job and I've covered the consumer and the investor mindset, which is important. These real estate guys are constantly talking about that. You get their ears buzzing again where it's like, you're right. Like you're absolutely right. When they answer that question, it should get to the point, well, I guess I can't expect to go out and make 50 grand a month without knowing how to do it. So truthfully, at 20 grand, I mean, that's a lot of money, but at the end of the day, if you guys can lead me to water and I can drink, like it is what it is. Like I have to overcome, right? So let's pause there for just a second. What did you notice? Like what was the process? What was the flow? What was different or unique versus what was the same as you guys are already doing?
For me, I'm a huge fan of question-based selling. I'm not reading off of a script or anything like that, but it just takes this, if we want to go back to that analogy of ninja stars, it just takes the amount of ninja stars you have to a whole nother level. Usually I go, the Cole Gordon 7 beliefs, make sure that those are checked off, and then kind of transition. But even in the transition, like there's minor things, maybe you have those major ones, but there are some minor things like the mindset around investment, like the mindset, justifying the cost, like you just went over that. I think it's incredibly thorough. I could see how it would be incredibly effective. Except one exception would be if somebody's ultra direct. They're going to be
Yes.
like, what are you doing? Give me the price. Like, I don't want to
So you
answer these
can
questions.
you can crack that guy, Rex. That's a really good point. Crack that guy. It's 20 grand. Let me ask you something though, Bob. When you think of making a $20,000 investment in your education to learn how to invest in real estate, what's the first thing that goes through your mind? Take that shit, like rip it away from him, right? And make him come to you. Rip it away from him. It's like, hey, it's 20 grand. And I just very matter of fact, it's 20 grand. My tone doesn't change. Let me ask you something though, Bob. And that's where my tone does.
Mhm.
When you think of investing $20,000, you can even make it feel bigger than it is, right?
Sure.
What's the first thing that goes through your mind? And it has to be delivered that way. It can't be $20,000, Bob. When you think of $20,000, what's the first thing that goes through your mind? What's the first thing that goes through your mind? And I'm just zipping it, right? Like I want him to I don't give a shit if he's quiet for 2 minutes. I'm going to let him process because I know what's coming back at me is one of two things. It's either it's a small price to pay. Yeah, 20 grand's 20 grand. Can you do any better than that? No. Or it's going to be, wow, man, that's way out of my price range. And I just don't know if this is, going to be right for me. And then this is where it's really, really crucial. We have to tie that whole piece back together then because we left a gap somewhere in our discovery, right? It's not about him and his relationship with money and debt. We should have covered that before. It's like, I'm curious, when you think of price range, how do you formulate that? How do you calculate what your price range is when it comes to creating a retirement for yourself and cash flow and a legacy for your family? I'm really genuinely curious, Bob. Well, I don't have 20 grand and I don't have, this and that. It's like, okay, but you guys have already done your homework and discovery to know that he has credit. He has credit cards. He has 401ks he can borrow from. He might have an IRA or self-directed IRA you can borrow from, right? So Bob, what do you mean it's out? Like it's out of your budget? Like, what do you mean? Well, man, I don't have the cash on hand to put like $20,000 in. If I do, it's going to take a lot of my money that I want to put towards deals. Bob, can I ask you just a really pointed question? Yeah, sure. When you think of real estate investors, let's look at Donald Trump. Love him or hate him. This isn't about politics. It's solely about what he's done in the real estate space. Now, if you follow Donald Trump long enough, you know that he got $1 million from his dad and he turned that into oodles and oodles and oodles of money, right? Not all of us have a dad that's going to hand over $1 million and show us how to start in real estate. But if we were to look at an apartment complex, let's say it was a 30 or 40 unit apartment complex and had a $6 million price tag on it, 99% of people that are new to real estate investing are going to look at that project and go, there's no way I can afford it. I don't have the money. I don't have the down payment. I don't have the, I don't. Would you agree with that, Bob? Yeah. I would. The real estate investor that knows what they're doing understands that every good deal gets funded. And they understand that even if they only end up owning 10 to 15% of that apartment complex, they're making 10 to 15% of the cash flow that apartment complex comes up with for the rest of their family's lives for generations to come. So let me ask you something. Are we more worried about the price tag of the $6 million? Or are we going to focus in on where we can go borrow the 20% down from a private money lender, get institutional or private money for the rest of the loan, determine what our cash flow and cash flow reserves look like, and refinance it in the next 2 years? If you could clear $10,000 to $40,000 a month on that apartment complex, where does the $6 million fit into that equation on whether or not you move forward on the deal? So do you feel how it's like we boil it down to the obvious? It's like, if you're making your decision like a consumer, this is not for you. But I have to show them and explain and walk them through that process before I do. Because if I can't expect them just to go, well, you're an idiot if you don't think like this, because they're not thinking like that. There's a reason they haven't started, right? They haven't started before.
Yep.
But if I lead them in that direction where it's like, well, help me understand something, what differentiates the consumer and the investor, right? And then when I come back full circle again and I hit them with like, are we still making our decision like we're buying a pair of shoes, or do we want to look at what's going to create us a retirement account in the safest, most effective, efficient way and duplicatable way possible, Bob? Yeah, I guess you're right. I never thought of it like that. Well, yeah, the hard part is we always make our decision based on cost, Bob. We were all taught that debt's bad. Don't use your credit cards, live on cash, pay things off, pay cash. And if you save your money and you do it for a long time, you're going to be okay. If that model really worked, do you think that the elderly, or I don't even know what the generation is, you guys probably know it better than I do, 65, 70, 80-year-olds, wouldn't they be living a different retirement if that were the truth? Yeah, I guess you're right. Okay. What do you think you have to do differently in order for you to become one of those people that are out doing deals, buying apartments, getting sub-2 deals, creating wholesales, has the power team, what do you think you have to do differently in order to be one of those people? I'm not going to tell him. I want him to tell me, because again, it's just the thing, it's the obstacles in his mind. It's not all the other ones. We're going to teach him those and how to overcome them.
And also, you've already given him options. So you've explained the difference between the mindset. You've told him things that, Donald Trumpians do that regular people don't do. So, if he believes it, he should be able to, put 2 and 2 together there.
100%. Well said. And once that's all dialed in, you guys, my real estate pitch is, what questions do you have? What does the process actually look like? If let's say I invested the 20, that's where my buyer questions start to come into play. And then I know he's done. Well, if let's say I invest the 20K on my credit card today, or however I'm going to find the money, that gives me a red flag. It's like, well, you have the money and I'm not letting you up the phone until you give me an ACH or credit card. Right.
Yeah.
But let's say we move forward. I mean, what does that actually look like? Well, let me give you the Reader's Digest version. I'm going to let the coaches coach, because that's what they do and that's what they're good at. When you sign up, now again, you guys know this better than I do. When we get you enrolled, I'm going to pair you with our head coach. I would make it sound like it, because it's true. It's our head coach, but they don't need to know we have no other coaches right now. I'm going to pair you with our head coach based on the stuff you told me and what you want to do. Bill's going to reach out to you within 24 hours. I'm going to change that. They said it's 3 days. We're not doing that shit. It's same day, unless it's after 4 or 5 o'clock. I'll make sure of that. When you get on the phone with Bill, it's going to be a quick introductory call. Get to know each other, share contact information. And then we get to work. And what that looks like is we have a Monday call, 9 a.m. You guys know all the numbers. I don't know when they are, how they are, but we have a Monday call, 9 a.m. where we cover deal flow. We cover, fix and flips. We cover, you guys know that. On Wednesday, we have a call that covers XYZ, and Friday we cover this, and this. So we could get into the details of the program, but Bob, I guess what I'm asking is, if you had full access to Bill by his cell phone, our head coach, and he were guiding you through these deals, and then you could bring these deals live to a group Monday, Wednesday, Friday, get all the support and guidance you need face to face in a Zoom call. Do you suspect that gives you the tools and resources you need to hit the targets we talked about? I don't have to give them all the details of the program. I don't want to overwhelm them. Right now, they're already saying yes. All I'm doing is putting the cherry on top. And if 100, you know what, Rex, that's exactly what I need. I just want to know I have the support. I want to know that when I call somebody, that it's going to get handled. You guys, the beauty in this pitch, I'll bring up the fact that it's like, hey, there's certainly some urgency, right? When you call your coach and you have a question, odds are that Bill's probably going to be on with another student, or he might be in the middle of one of his own deals. Our goal has always been a reasonable turnaround time. We try to get back to you as soon as we can. Our promise is we'll always get back to you by the end of it. The HGTV shows where we got to make the deal in the next hour, the deal's going bad. Like, that's not real life in real estate. And if it becomes that way, we're making very reckless decisions. Would you agree with that, Bob? Yeah, I'd agree with that. Okay. So knowing that you have touch points Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then throughout the week indefinitely, as long as you need it, we work with you until you get your first deal done at a minimum. I guess the question I would ask, just point blank, do you see any reason why this wouldn't allow you to hit your targets? So you see, your question way back, Rex, how do I temp gauge? I'm temp gauging the whole time, the entire process, right? And that way I don't ask for the sell until I know he's there. Yep.
He's confirmed it like 6 times probably at that point.
In different ways too, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like redundant. It's like I come from this angle, from this angle, from this angle. And then it's like, okay, well, Bob, what do you, just out of two questions actually, Bob. Gut feeling overall, do you feel like this is where you're supposed to be? I love that question, because I push them back, and it's like they're on rollerblades. I push them back, and they're like, well, yeah, and then they start coming back out. They make the decision. Your refund rate, your cancellation, your save rate is going to go way down, and your retention is going to go way up. Right. So yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Let's roll up our sleeves, shall we? Let's go. Okay. We're going to send out first things first. We're going to go ahead and collect payment. I always collect payment before I send the contract. I don't want any contract sent for the client to process it and get back to me tomorrow. I set a very clear expectation. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to process payment. Do you know what card you want to use? We need to split it over 1 or 2 cards. Okay, perfect. Go ahead and grab those. Oh, I need to look it up. No problem. I'm going to go ahead and get some of the paperwork to create your account ready. I'm going to stay on the line with you. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know when you're ready. And then I periodically, I talk them through it. I'm saying, hey, how's it going over there? Or I just bullshit them, right? I'm just talking whatever, keeping the conversation going while they're looking the cards up. I run payment, and then okay, next thing I'm going to send over the enrollment agreement real quick. It's short and sweet. We're going to go through that together, get it signed. It's all through DocuSign, so it makes it quick and easy. That way I can get you connected with Bill today and we'll get this thing rolling. So it's never a, let me send it over and have you review it. If they make that comment earlier in the pitch, I cover that right now. It's like, well, Bob, the conversation we're going to have is going to outline exactly what's in the agreement step by step. I guess I'm just curious, why would you need 24 hours to process an agreement if we outline it step by step and the agreement matches what we agree upon? Like, I'm never going to let them use, that's just an out. It's not about the agreement. It's them coming up with an out. It's like, no, I'm going to call you on your shit. I'm not going to let you get
Yeah,
it
they're
to
just uncertain and they believe that somehow 24 hours will make them feel better about themselves,
Yeah.
essentially.
And there will be some people that we need to give it to them, but they tell us early on in the pitch, like, look, man, I'm dead ass serious about doing this. Like, I'm all in on doing this, but I'm not going to do it today. So if that's a deal breaker, like, we can part as friends right now. If they tell me that earlier in the conversation, I'm still going to dissect it a little bit. Like, okay,
Sure,
just that's interesting. I don't hear that very often. Why is that? Have you had a bad experience, right? Like you said earlier, have you been burned in the past? Is there
Yeah.
something that happened? And then I can play off of it. It's like, yeah, they go work with this company and da da da. And then I use all that as a selling point. What was your experience? Why didn't it work? Okay, well, yeah, that totally makes sense. So I think it would be kind of foolish, with that being said, for me to ask you to make a decision today. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah, I think it would. Okay, fair enough. So here's what I would ask before we go any further, Bob. I'm going to respect that. Can you respect that I need a decision by tomorrow, whether it's yes or no, and I'm good with either? Make him meet you in the middle.
Yep.
And tie that shit down. Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, questions, thoughts, ideas. I'll share this document with each of you guys too, as soon as we're done.
Please do.
And coming from my perspective, I appreciate that run through. It's always good to go back to basic stuff and really get a handle on different kinds of accounts. Because I will say this to Brett, this account is definitely more of that closing style versus, like Corey knows an example, is a little different than you would look at that perspective. So it's good to get a refresh on it before going back into that account.
100%, man. No, I'm glad to hear that. And I agree, man. What else, guys?
I just want to comment real quick on what Michael said at that closing style, that specific wording. Like, it's interesting because like different styles will complement different offers and different people. Like, I think it's easy to get wrapped up on it's this one way, or this one way has been the best for me. And I think it's not true, in my opinion. I could be terribly wrong, but I think you have to adapt to, the offer and the person for sure. I don't think there's one way. There might be one way that works well for you, but I think there's
I
many
agree.
ways.
Well, yeah, like
I do
if you're selling like a car, you're not going to be talking about like investments. Like, do you know that this car is an investment? Yeah, like I think there's definitely huge differences for sure. I think that's a good point, Brett.
Yep, me too. Me too, man. Okay, guys. Well, that was solid. I hope that was valuable and gave you guys
Absolutely.
kind of some
Way good.
info to take.